Hi friends, I have the Canon 1300D with me. Is this camera worth to buy in 2022? Let's find out. Welcome to the Lukrembo channel. The Canon 1300D is one of the entry-level DSLRs Canon released back in 2016. 2 years down the line, Canon released 1500D. So right now, this camera costs around 12 to 15,000 rupees in the US market. So I'm going to have a detailed review of this camera to find out whether this camera is worth to spend this much money in 2022. Also, before that, let me thank my friend Regu for lending me this camera. He used this camera for 3 years and he recently upgraded to 80D. So without any further delay, let's get started. This camera has 18 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor and its ISO range covers from 100 to 6400. It has a continuous shooting up to 3 frames per second. It has a 3-inch fixed screen. It does not have a microphone port and it comes with a Digic 4 processor. Also, it comes with 9 autofocus points with 1 being cross type. The body of this camera is made entirely out of plastic with matte texture. It is somewhat resistant to scratches. This camera my friend used for 3 years and as you can see it still looks good as new. So I think it's pretty much correct. There is a rubber padding where your fingers and thumb would go, which makes it easier to shoot with one hand. SD card slot comes in the battery compartment and the buttons are positioned pretty nicely. So it's easily accessible also. So overall, the build quality of this camera is really good. With the advent of mirrorless cameras, the number of autofocus points as well as the autofocus accuracy has gone up to a new level. So with the 9 autofocus points in this camera, it's pretty good, but only if you're using it through viewfinder. If you're using it on a live view mode, I think that's not the case. It hunts for some time and it probably take up to 4 to 5 seconds to get focus, and sometimes it won't even focus at all. So I would strongly prefer using this camera only for viewfinder only, because the autofocus accuracy is really bad during live photo shoot. So that's one of the downside in the autofocus point. One of the major aspect of this camera would be its image quality. With the 18 megapixel sensor on this camera, you can take some really good shots. I will show you some of the images I've taken with this camera on the 1855 lens as well as 18135 and 50mm lens, and this includes some of the images taken by my friend Regu as well. So you can see what kind of images you can expect out of this camera. As you can see, you can get some really good images out of this camera, especially when you pair this camera body with some good glasses like the 18-135, the 50mm 1.8, 50mm 1.4, like that. I will talk about the lens recommendations in a later part. When you compare this camera like image quality with the Canon 200D, you won't find any significant difference, especially in well-lit conditions, but that changes when you go into low-light conditions. The ISO performance of this camera from 100 to 6400, these are the images, and like you see right now, from 1600 onwards you can see some significant noise on the images. So I would strictly use this camera up to 16400 to get some usable images. But still, if you can use some fast prime lenses like the 50mm 1.8 or 1.4, you can get away with some really good shots. For anyone who is looking for this camera for video purposes, I would strictly not recommend this camera because of some of the major features this camera does not have. First would be it does not have an articulating screen. So for videography, it might be a deal breaker for some of you. The second downside of this camera is it can shoot only up to 1080p, up to 30 frames per second. So you won't be able to shoot any kind of slow motion videos with this camera. Next up, it does not have a microphone port so that you can add an external mic to get some good audio. So if you're using this camera, you have to rely on an external device to get some good audio quality. Next up, it does not have continuous autofocus on video mode. So you have to mainly use or rely on manual focus to get for your video. So with these downside, I would not recommend this camera for video purposes. The other main feature of this camera would be its Wi-Fi. This is the feature which differentiates this camera from most of its competitors. The Canon has one of the most comprehensive and or user-friendly remote application system, be it for sending images as well as remotely accessing the camera using your mobile phone. So you can transfer images really fast, and the remote accessing for focusing also is really good. It really takes away one of the disadvantages it have while live focusing in photography mode, but unfortunately does not comes with a video mode in the mobile application like the Canon 200D or other higher end model cameras has. So the Wi-Fi, I would say it's definitely one of its plus points. To upgrade from your kit lens, the first lens I would recommend would be the 18-135mm lens from Canon. This lens is really sharp, and the focal length is really great for both for landscape as well as for getting some good portrait shots. The price range I would recommend for this lens would be from 8,000 to 10,000 rupees. Next up is the Nifty 50, the 50mm 1.8. This is a great lens for the price you are paying for it. It's worth every penny, and it's really sharp, and you can get some really good bokeh or background separation with the fast aperture, and it's really ideal for any type of low light photography. Now the price range I would recommend for this lens would be from 5,000 to 6,000 rupees in the US market. Next lens I would recommend would be the 55 to 250mm lens. It's a short telephoto lens which you can use for beginner level wildlife photography and bird photography, as well as you can get some really good portraits out of this lens. The price I would recommend would be again 5,000 to 6,000 rupees. So that's all for the lens recommendations for the 1300D. So my final verdict on this camera would be, if you are a person who is looking to start off in photography using your DSLR and you are on a tight budget, then I would definitely recommend this camera, because with the 18 megapixel sensor you are getting a really good image quality out of this camera, especially when you consider the Canon's color science and the lot of lens options available in the market at cheap price. I think this would be one of the best cameras you can buy for photography under 15,000 rupees. That's all for today's video. If you have any queries regarding this camera, you can just drop it down in the comment section, and please subscribe and share, and watch out this page for more. See you later.